Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I wanted to start my talk today with asking you to imagine for a moment where we were today if our 7.1 earthquake, Ridgecrest earthquake, would have happened here in LA instead of 150 miles away. Where would we have been today, or you have been? Our scientists, our USC research institutes and so on project that if that earthquake would have happened here, which could have been 50 times larger than Northridge earthquake, we would have had more than $200 billion of economic loss and property damage. And this is several years old. I think if we were to recalculate those numbers today, it's probably much more because of the values of real estate going up as much as they have been last couple of years, several years. We would have had thousands of people injured and dead. According to FEMA, 40% of our businesses would not even come back. Imagine what would have happened to your city if you lost 40% of your revenue, of your business, if as an economy, if we lost 40% of our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why I am so proud on behalf of Optimum Seismic to be involved with this series of seminars and these efforts by true leadership of BISFET, Tracy Hernandez, someone that I consider my friend now after this couple of years of working with her and understanding her thoughtfulness as a leader in business. And our other organizing and presenting leaders, SCAG, of course, LADC, and of course LA County for their involvement in this. And I can't forget USRC, someone that we become very familiar with and appreciate of their efforts and their leadership on the engineering and technical side. Thank you, Evan. And with that, I want to thank Tracy for her leadership again and the BISFET staff that have done so much to put all of this together. So at this time, I'd like you all to give them a round of applause, please. Thank you. I'm going to start with talking about what are the type of buildings that we are concerned about. One of the oldest one that the state of California has taken the leadership of almost 30 years ago. In 1989, the state of California with SB 547 enacted a mandate that all cities in seismic zone 4 identify their unreinforced masonry buildings and adopt ordinances to deal with them. It did not tell the cities what to do. The ordinances was up to them what to do with the ordinances. The ordinance could be as little as identifying the buildings as vulnerable, hazardous, putting a plaque on the building and end it there. Or require the building owners to actually retrofit the buildings. This happened in 1989. It was following the leadership of City of LA in 1981 enacting the first retrofitting ordinance in the United States that was dealing with 8,000 buildings. That was shortly before we started in this business. My partner, Mr. Vadani, who just graduated from USC in 1982, his first job was a seismic retrofitting company, and 2 years later he was in business, 1984. This is when our company was founded. So these buildings in California, about 80% of them are complete. There is still about 20%, as per Seismic Safety Commission, of these buildings that have not been. There are cities that Josh Mesakin mentioned that if they have enacted ordinances but they have not followed through with actually enforcing the ordinances, those are the 20% that are out there that need to be dealt with. Next are these buildings, what we call soft story or weak story buildings, which could be both multifamily, residential and commercial building, office buildings, and many of these are being retrofitted right now in LA and some of the major cities, but there is still probably about 60 to 70% of the state that haven't adopted any ordinances or identified these buildings yet. Next are tiltup buildings. Tiltup buildings that were built before 1976. These are very, very important because they house many of our industrial and commercial facilities, like food manufacturing, like pharmaceutical. These are business parks. These are where a lot of important everyday things that we need are manufactured. Our California Manufacturing and Technology Association is one of the supporters of this event and a promoting member of these events. Next, we have the concrete frame non-ductile structures. There are a couple of cities that are currently in Southern California are mandating retrofitting. This is City of Los Angeles and City of Santa Monica. One of the interesting things we heard from Mr. King again was just because you have so much time, it doesn't mean you're going to have to. You should wait all that long. And unfortunately, both the City of LA and City of Santa Monica have afforded these owners very long time, maybe more than 20 years, and that is an issue. Next are buildings that are steel frames that were built before 1996. This type of buildings were identified as vulnerable after the Northridge earthquake. 1994, we had the earthquake. 1996, the code changed. That's why these buildings, we know they're faulty. Now, I want to quickly go over the big picture, which may not be obvious why your business should prepare for the next major earthquake, which is the title of my talk. These are the big picture items. On the social issues, we have to protect affordable housing. Most of these old buildings that are naturally occurring affordable housing are the older buildings that need retrofitting, are the vulnerable buildings. We need to make sure that our infrastructure is protected, so we shield communities from chaos. Disclosures, we heard again from Mr. King, inform public about personal risks. The social justice, economically disadvantaged communities are usually with these vulnerable buildings, where the vulnerable buildings are found. On the environmental side, we have to protect the public health, because many of these buildings are the ones that were built in before the 80s, where we used asbestos and lead. Think about when they are in our waterways. If they get in waterways, they can contaminate our water supplies. They can kill our endangered species and so on and so forth. The other thing that very interesting, according to a representative that spoke at one of the BizFed events last year, USGBC, they projected that there would not be enough landfills to receive all debris after a major earthquake here in Southern California. Can you imagine the chaos that would create? Now, we're concerned with businesses today. The topic is geared towards businesses. What are the economic benefits? Of course, I mentioned 40% of our businesses are projected not to be able to come back. That is unimaginable damage to any business, to any economy. 92% of our economy is made of our small businesses in California. 92% of them. We need to protect the small businesses. And we need to protect against the huge recovery costs, the $200+ billion we talked about. Now, here we have a video for you that shows that retrofitting works. I thought about what to present, and it's really hard because every building is different. There are all kinds of sizes, all kinds of types of building. I chose this because this is very proven both in US and outside of US. This particular video is in Japan. If you can see, this is a huge laboratory here that up on the top you can see people watching. So this is a shake table that is going to replicate one of these earthquakes. If we can start that. Ladies and gentlemen, the one standing was retrofitted. It actually works. Now, the next issue that was both brought up by the Mr. Evans and Mr. Keene that was very interesting was building owner versus business owner. Unfortunately, when we talk about, ask people about, have you thought about structural integrity of your building? People say, oh, I don't own the building. It doesn't mean anything. As we heard before, you still have issues. And in the next slides, we have some, we do have some kind of what happens if you do not do retrofitting. Option A, we're assuming again just the typical building, a $2.5 million value. It could be 7,000 square feet commercial. It could be 8-unit residential. If you spend the $75,000 on the retrofitting, this is what you do not deal with down the line. If you didn't, loss of your equity. You could lose all of your equity from 30% to 100%, depending on how much debt you have. You can lose your cash flow. You can be negligent, found liable for negligence. You have to deal with your conscious deaths and injuries that are caused to people. Cost of demolition. Also cost of repair. Within the cost of demolition, it's also hazmat exposure. You get notices from the city to comply. After 2 or 3 months after the earthquake happens, you have to demolish the building. Even though if you do not have income from the building, you still have to demolish the building. And demolition, ladies and gentlemen, is going to cost more than the cost of the retrofitting, because you probably are going to find asbestos or lead in the building. Now I'm going to, since I'm out of time, I'm just going to very quickly go through these. When you're dealing with the business, you basically you get the notice to stop work. If a building is found unsafe, So there's no cash flow. Your business stops. Okay? And when that happens, you could lose also equipment and inventory. We talked about this again. There is another statistics that 40% of businesses will not survive more than 9 days if they lost their IT capabilities. 9 days. Again, all these are common sense issues. They're not hard to figure out. Loss of workforce. We all are right now dealing with shortage of trained labor, and which is our most important asset. And after a while, they're not coming back. You heard enough about liability, so I don't need to discuss that. But environmental concern as well. The hazmat, we talked about it a couple of times. That's a problem coming in third or fourth. Some of the things have already been talked about. And next, basically, is the fact that if you stop operating as a business, someone else will fill in the gap. That person could be local, could be out of state, or could be out of the country with our global economy. Somebody will fill in the gap and take your share of the market. So, in conclusion, earthquake retrofitting, ladies and gentlemen, it's good business. Thank you very much.